but I do want to talk about the Knicks because obviously they're in a 5-game losing streak. And as you said, while they haven't had great improvement, there has been a modest improvement since they fired David Fizdale. They hired Mike Miller. They were playing well before the 5-game road trip, which was pretty much a disaster. What have you seen from the Knicks as a team that has improved, even if slightly, since the coaching change?
Well, I took a lot of notes and I went through a lot of the numbers. So let's start there, and then maybe we can pick off some ideas and some things that come out of this. Because the first thing I look at when there's a coaching change is what are the minutes distribution? Who's playing more? Who's playing less? How do they alter that? So I'm going to run through these things and we'll see what we come up with out of that, because I'm still kind of processing, and maybe you can help me with this too. So the thing that jumped out at me first was Ntilikina goes from 26 minutes to 17.4. So that's a huge drop for anybody. And that's got to, I don't know what that's going to do for his psyche, but that's got to do nothing good for him, which is too bad because I like Frank and I like his development. And I feel like, maybe he should be getting somewhere in the middle between 26 and 17.
Right.
But to overnight do that is rough. Mitchell Robinson got a bump of 3.5 minutes, which is good. I like him, and he needs to develop, which is another reason why it would be foolish, I think, to get Drummond. Drummond is a guy who's not going to get you where you want to go. Mitchell Robinson could be. He's the guy who can rim run, be the Capella, but maybe even more effective on defense than Capella ever could be. Marcus Morris lost some time as well, which I thought was interesting because he's scoring better now. He's shooting a little bit better, and he's scoring better with less minutes. And Randall all of a sudden is up over 4 points more per game than he was. So that's interesting to me. And by the way, so is Mitchell Robinson, and he's not generating his own points. He's clearly just cuts and lobs, and that's what he's getting his points from. And Portis as well. So you see some interesting dynamics here with how that's working. And so, have they dumbed down the offense? That's not the right word. Have they simplified the offense to kind of I think they have. They don't pass the ball a ton. It doesn't move that quickly. So, it could very well be that Mike Miller was like, let's just break these things down, simplify a little bit more. We're going to run some more traditional. I see a little triangle in there. Believe it or not, it's still hanging out in there.
Oh,
don't tell Nick.
Don't tell Nick fans that. But they haven't played
I saw
better,
a little pinch post. I saw a little corner option where they threw it to the corner. The guy cuts the hoop, and then they screen the corner with the ball. That's right out of the triangle. And by the way, a lot of teams still do that, but it's always funny when you see the Knicks do it. So a lot to unpack there. I got even more, but I'll even flip this on you guys and say, what are your reactions to the minutes distributions?
So I think the first one he mentioned was Frank, which is fascinating to me because Frank is a fan darling. Everybody, a lot of the Knicks hardcore fans really do love him, and I think that they might be surprised to see that his numbers have dipped so much since Mike Miller got hired now, because he's had some of his best games since Mike Miller has come in. Yeah. Now, I know part of that had to do with Elfrid Payton being out and Smith, being out, and now Smith is still out, but Elfrid Payton is not back and he's starting, so Frank has lost that starting spot. I don't understand the minutes distribution, to be honest. I think that this is a Knicks team that is not a kind of team that's going to be able to compete for a playoff spot. I know that Marcus Morris has said that they were trying to get to that 8th spot, but during his West Coast trip, I think they've shown that when they play against the top teams, they're not at that level. So to me, when I hear Frank Ntilikina getting so few less minutes from Elfrid Payton, a guy who is a decent player but not a starting point guard in my opinion, I like hearing Mitchell Robinson get a minutes bump, but Ntilikina, I think for me, is the one that I look at and I say he's starting to play a lot better. And this guy was your lottery pick. Why isn't he starting? Why isn't he playing more minutes?
Yeah, and what's also strange is that Frank is also a guy that, if they really want to look at potentially making a move for Drummond or whatever player they covet, he's a piece that could potentially be included, and you want to showcase Frank Ntilikina and Marcus Morris as much as possible. So for those guys to be the guys that have had their minutes dipped seems to be strange, but you mentioned both have kind of played better since that. So I don't know what that is in terms of their psyche, but it's affected them. Morris, it's somehow, it's affected him positively. I think a lot of it comes with a lot of the trade talk we've heard. Yeah. His name being dangled heavily because he's on an expiring deal. It wouldn't surprise me if, it's even been communicated to him that, you play better and, you could end up on a contender. He wants to stay. He's vocalized that he wants to stay.
I got two more things. I'm looking at the stats I'm going to throw out there for you. Ready? Well, and one of them is the lineups. So the next thing you look at is, okay, which lineups are they changing around? And here's the one thing that concerns me about a lot of NBA coaches. I don't think they look at the lineup data enough. And I feel like they still sub a lot with like gut feel in a game. And that might be fine, but I don't know. With the kind of analytics they have now, they should be 30 games in knowing already, okay, if we want to put this guy in here because that's when he does his best with these other four players. And I still don't think they do that. Now, I know that foul trouble always comes into play or little injuries and always screws up rotations, but I just feel like it's not scientific enough. But here's what's interesting I've noticed. So the five-man Morris, Payton, Randall, Robinson, and Barrett, they were a net rating of negative 20.3 under Fizdale. Now they're a plus 10.3, which is like shocking because it's a high usage lineup that they use a lot. And I'm like, you never see a turnaround like that. That's crazy. And I try to look through the footage. It's kind of hard because it takes forever to try and find exactly those five and whatever. But if you look at like even just the usage rate comparison, okay, because I'm like, okay, what happened here? Who's not doing what? So R.J. Barrett's usage plummeted from 26.5% to 13.7%. And then Morris went up from 16.8 to 28. So suddenly Morris is a lot more aggressive. I mean, he was shooting the crap out of the ball under Fizdale. I mean, 50% from three on high volume. And he's still there. He's 42 in the last since Miller took over. So he's still stroking it for him, which is great. And then Robinson also lost a lot of his usage, went down from 22.6 to 14. So, and then Randall is just Randall. He just seems very steady. You got to wonder like what the dynamic there where they must have talked to RJ or something. And, because you don't just cut your usage in half without a conscious decision, I imagine, while you're out there with that group. So that's a big one. And that's probably the most where you're seeing the most improvement over the last, 14 or 17 games.
And one of the players that, besides Barrett and besides obviously Mitchell Robinson, one of the players that Knicks fans are also, they have high hopes for potentially is Kevin Knox, a guy we haven't mentioned and you didn't mention. He struggled mightily for probably about a month or two.
You've been talking about the G League potentially.
Yeah. What have you seen from him? Do you feel like he's a starting caliber 3 or 4 man at this point? I mean, I know he's 20 years old. He's still really young, but it's really alarming to see him out there. To me, I think he still has kind of a weak handle. I think that he doesn't do well in kind of a game where he's not getting plays drawn up for him, where he has to kind of find his own shot in a lot of ways. What did you see from Kevin Knox in a little bit you saw?
Well, this kind of goes to my next other stat point I wanted to make, which was 3-point shooting. And that's not going well for them. And part of the reason is that you can see they take a lot of contested threes. It's hard for them to generate open threes. And the reason is because they don't really have a guy that's going to break somebody off the handle and get in the lane consistently and then kick out. They just don't have that. Dennis Smith could be that guy, but he's not playing and he's injured and stuff. So that's a problem. And so when you do watch, I just started to watch a whole bunch of their threes to see how are they generating them. And what you see certainly recently is when they do get good penetration into the middle and they kick, it's to Knox. And he's open because they're leaving him open, and he's just not his 3-point shot is broke. He needs an off season at least to train and maybe get better at that if he has the right trainer. So, but they continually get Knox open in the corners. They continually get Elfrid Payton open on the wing, and they're just breaking these shots. So there's no question in my mind that when you start to conceive of the offense, you got to sort of tweak it so that it's not them there. You got to have Wayne Ellington in that spot. I even saw a good example where there was one where Wayne Ellington is in that corner waiting, spotting up, and his man was going to have to help, but Knox cuts through before the pick and roll, and it bumps Ellington up from the left corner to the left wing, and his man does not leave. So now it's Knox's man who helps. They kick it to Knox, and he shoots it because he's open, but it's not anywhere close. So they're using him in a way that's troublesome on that end. He's simply not going to flourish in that role. And, his handle isn't great, so I don't know if he's going to flourish in a role where he's trying to break guys down off the pick and roll. I've seen a little bit of that, a little bit of handling, but, I don't know if he's ready for that prime time a lot of consistently. So he's sort of stuck in this weird position on a team that, doesn't really run. Their spacing isn't great. They like to post up. They have a lot of guys who like shooting mid-range. And so it's sort of not conducive to a guy like that where, like, the way it's set up now, Randall and Portis. Now, by the way, Portis is a guy who you think, okay, he's sort of that Knox role too, and he's getting threes and he's shooting nicely. He's got a better shot. He's able to knock that down. But that said, Portis, they leave him open too. I mean, man, he should be shooting even better than he is.
Yeah, he's not trying to shoot it, trust me.
So that's my take on Knox, if that fills it in. And then touching upon the 3-pointers too.